Welcome to the Dynasty Evaluation Show. It's John McLean. I'm here with JT. We got some things to talk about. We're going to recap the Chicago Live Fishbowl draft that happened in the Northwest suburbs of Chicago. Then we got some NFL news and notes that happened. We finally get some stuff rolling in from the world of the NFL. And then we're going to go over a couple redrafts sleepers and might turn in, who are definitely Dynasty keepers. So we'll let you guys know we'll let you know who we love. We will talk to you in a minute. We were 2 seconds away from having my daughter introduce the show, and she was on here. She was like, she said it twice. She got all ready, and then she just said, "I'm done. I'm not doing it 3 times." You guys should have recorded
She did a great intro, Johnny. You just forgot to hit the go live. She wasn't coming back after you missed out on that one.
She wasn't coming back. That's it. It's no fun for them to do it more than one time or a couple times. So, but anyway, she might come back down and rejoin us for a minute and say hi. But that's it. We had a couple shows last night. JT, you were kind of busy with some fantasy and frame stuff. I had a show, 2 shows of my own here. So, tell me about last night. What'd you guys do?
Yeah, after we did the draft, we did a 10-round startup mock on Dynasty 365, which was great. So check that out if you didn't get to watch that last night. Go and check that on YouTube or on your favorite podcast stream. And then also late night, we had IDP Hunter as a guest on the Shoot the Gap, and we talked a little bit AFC East IDP guys. So we went through the whole division, kind of talked who we liked, who we didn't from each team and each position. So go ahead and check that show out as well.
Yeah, I was peppering with questions on the AFC East of the offensive side of the show with Howard Bender and all them guys. It was a great show.
Yep, another good one. Yep.
Then I already started cutting the grass. I want to try and get as much as I possibly could done. I had to go back out in the backyard, and I still have more to go. It takes about 2 hours to cut my grass. So I had a riding lawnmower, and it broke down. Now I'm back to a push mower, and it absolutely blows.
So, John, I grew up mowing yards and mowing properties for my dad, and we got the riding mowers. I don't know if I could ever go back to a push mower. I've got to have the riding mower at this point. I've mowed so many yards in my life. I got to have the riding mower.
I have 4 kids, so it was nice. It was piggy bump up. It started with me.
Yeah, whose turn is it? Who's up?
And now the youngest one's already 19, and it's like shit. They're in college or working, they're busy, so it's like I need the exercise anyway. So whatever, I'll take it. It is what it is. But so you were in Cincinnati. You did the Scott Fish Bowl draft in Cincinnati last week. We kind of recapped everything that happened over there, and then we had the Chicago draft here. It was the morning of. We found out that the place would have no air conditioning, where it was 93 degrees and about 80% humidity. So it was pretty hot in there. And it was the beer was like, I was drinking as many beers as I could. You couldn't do shots in this place. It was one of those, they make their own beer on the premises. They made their own whiskey too. So I'm asking the waitress, can I just have a couple shots I was going to buy the whole table a shot. She's like, we don't do shots here. And I asked the owner, I'm like, hey, we're having a special event. Can I just get some shots? He's like, we don't do shots here. So I'm like, can I buy a bottle? They're like, yeah, it's $44. I'm like, all right, good. I'll take a bottle. And they're like, you can't buy it here. I'm like, what do you mean I can't buy it here? Like, well, you can't drink it here. So I'm like, all right,
those
well, tell me outside.
Illinois drinking laws, dude. The pesky Illinois drinking laws. Believe me, I've fought that fight, John, for over a decade. They've gotten better. They've gotten better, especially for breweries, small breweries, craft breweries, and distilleries. But still some ways to go on a few of those things.
Dude, I'm like, sell me a bottle outside, and I'll come back in and bring it in here. Like, we can't do that either. I'm like, what the I've never done a draft in my life without doing shots of some kind of whiskey, So this is kind of like, what the hell?
It's the way it is packaged. The same thing at my brewery. You sell packaged beer. People are like, hey, can I just pop these cans open and drink it here? I'm like, no. You can't actually. You could buy the package to go, but you got to buy like the glass and drink it here in the glass. I'm like, believe me, I understand it's cheaper, but that's just the way it works with the law here in Illinois.
Yeah, that's what it is. I made the best of a situation there.
You guys look like you made it good. I people that know me know I just do not handle heat real well as I get older. And man, you told me about that. I was like, oh, I would have been damn near passing out. The air conditioning is my friend. I just stayed in Colorado, and at my buddies, and it was like 95, 100 the whole time there, and they don't have AC at their house. I was dying. Like
Yeah.
they got crazy things. I don't know if you ever heard about. They're called attic fans. There's like these huge fans everybody in that area turns on, and it blows because again it's Colorado, so it's cooler, or in the winter it's freezing, but like in the summer it's usually not that hot, and at night it actually gets really really reasonable. Like we were just sitting outside on the patio just absolutely loving it once the sun went down, but man, during the day it was real hot. I was like, let's take a trip down the street to a restaurant and let's sit there for a couple hours under the AC because I was, whoo, it was toasty.
Those are whole house fans. Those are what they're called.
Yep.
Yeah,
So, yep. I guess like in that neighborhood, like in the 70s and 80s when they were building up my buddy's neighborhood, that's kind of what everybody did. Everybody had these fans. They just turn them on at night and kind of get the air flowing through the whole house. But very few places, I guess, have central air, which that would be the first thing I would be adjusting at my house. I would be.
Yes.
I'm the same person. Like I damn near have the AC on inside during the winter. Like I got it cold. I'd rather have a blanket and a hoodie on in my house and kind of get all set. I just can't. Oh, I hate sitting around just sweating. Drives me nuts. So enough about
degrees year round in my house, buddy. That's kind of how it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes, sir.
Yeah, Steven Johnson's not the best guy for picking out locations. Last year was kind of a cramped building, and he decided to leave a couple of my Dynasty home leagues because I asked him to get a bigger venue. And then this year he finds a place, no air conditioning. The guy, you cannot doubt his fundraising ability. They had like $5,000 donated to charity at the event. He is fantastic at that kind of stuff. But he should definitely let somebody else worry about the location. And then John Bosch got on me on Twitter like, Steven's going to be the guy. I'm like, dude, get out of here, you fucking nerd.
John, you're just going to have to let it go. We're going to have to let it go.
I'm done now.
I know. Yeah, I know you're upset. But we're not certain feuds. We're not certain.
No, here we go. But that was our live draft experience. You were
John Bosch did a great job. The one in Cincy. I had a fantastic time. We were at Voodoo Brewery. It was fantastic there. They're a brewery, but they actually have like a full liquor license. So they had a full restaurant, bar, everything. It was awesome. I think last time I saw John, I think he posted in the chat that they were up to around $8,000 raised at the Cincinnati one, which is amazing. I mean, they had so many prizes, so much giveaways that he ended up giving some to some of the waitresses that took care of us all day because there was enough guys that didn't live in Cincinnati that didn't want to waste some things that like they didn't want to take gift cards and things that they weren't going to be able to use. So that was kind of cool, able to give some of the stuff to them. And then a shout out to John. I showed up and they couldn't find my bag that I had pre-bought with like, we got a really cool snifter glass and a t-shirt, a live draft t-shirt, and a bunch of other things. They couldn't find my bag. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to complain about it. Like I bought it, but I I want to have fun. So I just had fun. And I was like, like a couple days later, I sent him a message and I was like, hey, anyway, you guys found my bag with like my name on it? He's like, oh yeah, I got it. I was wondering why you didn't have it. And I was like, I don't know where it got put, but we looked everywhere, couldn't find it, got it afterwards. So, and he mailed it to me, got it like a day or two later. It's awesome. Appreciate it, John. Thanks for all the hard work and effort and getting me that. So I was pumped to get the box. And I was glad to see he found it and sent it to me.
I think I raised like $500 year one when I ran a fishbowl at Bourbon Street. And then they're up to like $5,000-$6,000 now. So I think how good they are.
Well, they've done a great job. Well, in the first year, it was more about like, can we run these live drafts? Like, how are they going to turn out? So it wasn't as big of a, okay, hey, like, let's do a bunch of charity stuff that first year. And then I think it's like, oh, okay, with these live drafts, we can do charity. And since he did a great thing, they did raffle tickets. So you could buy raffle tickets in advance. And then when you went there, you were able to put them in stuff. I've said this in other lives. I got real lucky. I had a buddy sit next to me. There was an Icky Wood signed jersey. He was my favorite player when I was a little kid. He won the jersey. He's from Detroit. He's like, I I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm not an Ickey Woods fan. He gave me the jersey. I was like, dude, I owe you. Next time I see you, I owe you all kinds of stuff. So that was awesome of him. And then Andrew Hall, he donated a Kellen Winslow signed mini Chargers helmet. I'm a Mizzou guy. Kellen Winslow, all-time Mizzou great. So I put a bunch of my tickets in that one too, and it actually ended up winning that one. So I was pretty pumped about both of those.
I got the Chicago Spartan. Thanks for jumping in. Chicago was hot. Great beer, though. I had the wheat beer. I'm a Blue Moon guy, so I had their wheat stuff. I was going back and forth between their wheat stuff and Miller Lite. It was okay. I think I'm just a creature of habit more than that being good beer. I'm just kind of a crabby old man who just drinks the same shit all the time. So it is what it is. So how's my team look?
Yeah, the thing that Chicago Sports asking, how's your team look? Did you if you get a chance here, we might want to pull up your team and take a look at it.
I'm done right now. I'm just going to read it out real fast because we're already 10 minutes into this. I started out with CeeDee Lamb, and then I got Dak Prescott to go with that stack. And then I got Travis Etienne
I like that.
in round 3, and then I got Trevor Lawrence in round 4. I was going to get Trevor Lawrence at some point in time on this team, so it is what
I got Lawrence in round 4 as well. I was pretty pumped about it.
Studs. We're on the same page. Joe Mixon, Rashad White are my 2 running backs after that. I got Jaden Reed, Aaron Jones, Pat Freiermuth in round 9. Round 10, I went Baker just, in case something happens to my quarterbacks. I got another stack there with Rashad White. Then I got Javante, who everybody hates right now for some reason. I got Antonio Gibson, who everybody knows I love. And then I got Mike Gesicki. That was kind of a reach pick from my part. I could have waited like 3 more rounds probably. Got Demario Douglas for his return ability. I got Jalen Wright because I love him, and he'll be a starting running back in Miami at the end of this year. I got Harrison Butker as my kicker because I'm Catholic, and people, I'm just, everybody made fun of me, but whatever. I got John Smith.
He's been getting a hard time. I saw on a bunch of the award shows. So
yeah, John Smith, Michael Mayer. I think those are both guys that have a chance to especially if something goes to what happens on the offense. Then I got Khalil Herbert, which I think he's going to get traded or something like that before the season starts, maybe hopefully to Dallas or something like that. Then I got Greg Dulcich because I think he'll be a decent contributor on that team. Jacob Cowling, who we'll talk about later in the show today, and then Rasheen Ali was my last pick so far. So, how was your team? Did you pull it up yet? Can you read it out loud real fast?
Yeah. So I was out of the 1-4 slot, so I took CMC. I was going to take Anthony Richardson with my at 1-4, and he actually went the pick before me. I couldn't believe it. So I actually went Christian McCaffrey at 1-4. I wasn't expecting to go tight end in the second round, but Trey McBride got back to me. And then with the third round reversal, a lot of people skipped QB in the first round. So I was expecting to go QB there, but I saw a ton of guys left on the board. So I switched it up. I took Trey McBride's. I missed out on tight end last year, and it crushed me in the Scott Visual. I pretty much missed the playoffs because my tight ends were terrible. So I went tight end, got Trey McBride, came back. I got Purdy in the third and Lawrence in the fourth. Michael Pittman in the fifth, which I loved. It took me 5 rounds to take a Colts player, which was shocking. There was actually more people there from Indy than I thought would be there, and there was a lot of people drafting Colts players. I thought I was going to get them all. So then, of course, because we're in Cincinnati, all kinds of Bengals and Browns fans, they hate the Steelers. So I was able to get a bunch of Steelers players, which was awesome. So I got George Pickens in the 6th, Najee in the 7th. I got Freiermuth in the 8th, and then Goddard in the 9th, which I was pretty pumped about getting those guys back-to-back rounds. I took a little chance on Brian Thomas, the rookie out of LSU for the Jags, a little stack there with T-Law. Then I got Chase Brown, which I was a little surprised he was around in the 11th. I had quite a few Bengals fans in my draft. I was surprised he got there. Then I went Drake May as my 3rd QB. I think there's a chance that he ends up putting up some solid numbers on that team for a team that's going to be down a lot of games. And I like his rushing ability. I think it's underrated. Went Cade Otton in the 13th round. As I said, I wanted to make sure I got tight ends. So I went Otton. I loaded up there. Then I went Josh Downs from the Colts. Trey Tucker for the Raiders. This is when I started going return heavy. So we'll see if this makes or breaks my draft. But I went Trey Tucker. I think he could be the 3 for the Raiders. I also think he can kick and punt return. I took Neon Himes for the Browns. I think he can kick and punt return and possibly be the 3rd down back. So I grabbed him. Then I went kicker Brandon Aubrey from Dallas. If you looked at the kicking stats, 3.3 points for an extra point, not a field goal, an extra point. So if you got a kicker that scores on a team that scores a lot of points, those guys actually finished really high in overall scoring. So I wanted to make sure I had a good kicker, grabbed him. Anthony Gould from the Colts, rookie out of Oregon State. I think he can kick and punt return. Probably is going to be their 4th or 5th wide receiver, but I think he can play special teams. Devin Duvernay on the Jags now, so I think he could possibly play a little bit, but I like his return ability there in Jacksonville. I grabbed Jacoby Brissett just in case with Drake May. I wanted to make sure I had both the Patriots guys, so I grabbed him. I couldn't help myself. I had to do it just because I love him. I know he's been down. People are out on him, but I grabbed Juju Smith-Schuster for the Pats. I think if he could get healthy, I think he actually has a chance to be their number 1 wide receiver. It's going to be iffy with all the injuries if he can come back. But I took a shot in the 21st round with him, and then I took Matt Gay, kicker from the Colts. I wanted to add double up on kicker. I got him on with my last pick.
Nice. So, yeah, Chicago Spartan. Imagine Khalil Herbert going to KC. That would be awesome. I would love that. That would be like 5 or 6 of my. I'm trying to trade for Khalil Herbert in like 5 leagues right now that I'm in, and people are just waiting for the news to break. He's going somewhere. It's just a matter of time. And then he said he's in the Chicago fishbowl draft. He started with AR, Laporta, Burrow, and Ingram from the 7th spot. So,
I like that.
It's a great spot.
AR was one of the guys that was all over the place. I mean, I saw him go as high as, like I said, in my draft, he went 3. I saw him go like very into the first round, beginning of the second round in a couple drafts. Mm-hmm. It really just depended. He was one of those guys, you just didn't know. And the same thing with CMC. I saw him go number 1 overall in a ton of leagues, and I saw him drop to the end of the first round as well. So that's the fun thing about Scott Fishbowl. It totally depends on who's in your division. Things can get wild. I saw guys go 6th round in one draft, and then 14th round in another draft. I mean, it was kind of all over the place.
It makes you feel like a schmuck when you draft someone. You look at our draft board, and you see someone you drafted like round 10, like round 14 somewhere else.
Yeah, you're like you see him go so much later. You're like, oh. But I've learned doing that, though. Sometimes you walk around, you look and see who's going in what rounds. You're like, oh, I can wait on him. And then, boom, everybody takes him that round. I was laughing because when I took Anthony Gould for the Colts, I told you there's quite a few Colts fans in ours. And I took him in the 18th round, not thinking a big deal, thinking I was like, kind of like, oh, this might be too early to be taking him. Like 3 guys immediately texted in the chat, oh, he was my pick this round. I can't believe you sniped me. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I took him then, because I thought it was a little too early to take him. And then everybody was mad because they were going to take him that round. So you just never know.
Like I wanted players who do return yards but actually produce on the field, and some guys are just special teamers. And like Xavier Gibson went like in round he was drafted like in the live draft time, so I don't know what round it was, but I'm like, I'm not paying up for a guy like that when there's actually producers that still do punt, still in the clock or still on the board, so that wasn't going to happen. But
yeah, I'm the same way. I really jumped on return guys. Like I said, I kind of made sure I had my whole lineup full with backups and then went return guys. So I started doing return guys in the 15th round.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started, because I figured, hey, if this ends up not working out, and we look at it and we watch the first 2-3 weeks of the season and these guys are not scoring, or for some reason these guys aren't returning, you can drop them and pick up somebody else, go get the guy that is doing it, or just another back. Because at that point, I was looking through the lineups. I'm like, most of these guys at this point are going to be their 3rd option, either as a wide receiver or running back on their team. So that's where I just went with the returners and figured I'd take my chances. Because, Fishbowl, like any other league, a lot of times it's the waiver wire pickups that end up being the difference maker for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, fishbowl stuff behind us now. We're going to talk about some NFL current events. Devante Adams is not getting traded as reported by the Raiders. We'll see about that. I mean, the greasy wheel gets the oil sometimes, or the, like they kind of like the saying goes. The Bears.
That's really. I was going to say, John, I was like, with the new show Receiver on Netflix, I think that's pushing the Devante narrative, because quite a few of those episodes, he looks like he's real pissed to be on the Raiders. Oh, yeah. So I think that has kind of pushed that narrative this week, in the fact that that show came out, and me and my son been watching it. It's NFL players, so the language isn't great, but he loves the show. He thinks it's great. But yeah, I think that's kind of pushing the Devante stuff.
Absolutely. Bears, the Bears, as Caleb Williams would say, got locked them down. Him and Roman Dunze are locked up for the next 4 years with a 5th-year option for first-round picks. So that should be a nice stack for a long time. And the Bears hopefully have their quarterback in the future. My son went to University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and one of the players that was there was a guy named Quin Meinerz. And back in the day, they called him the belly because he always had his shirt pulled up like his ribs with his belly hanging out. And he still does that in the pros sometimes. You see him; he's always the belly, the belly crew and all that stuff. He just signed a 4-year, $80 million, $45 million guaranteed as a guard for Denver Broncos. Couldn't be more happy or for a guy like that, man. I love offensive linemen. As an offensive lineman myself, I love seeing these guys get paid. I love seeing that guy from the snap of the ball until after the whistle. He has got his hands and his face mask on somebody's body. He is just the epitome of the little engine that, that little engine that could, or the little engine that never stopped. Guy is just a blocking phenom. It's so nice to see a guy like that just get absolutely paid. Love it.
Yeah, nice little story about him I saw on kind of floating around about, the COVID season. Whitewater D3 school basically didn't have their season, and he ended up getting invited to the Senior Bowl because another player got injured, and they actually invited him, and that's where he got seen and ended up getting drafted because of that Senior Bowl invite and the way he showed out at the Senior Bowl, and then ends up turning into this. So those are the kind of stories you love, little school guys getting a break somewhere and doing the most they can with it.
That school, Whitewater, my son went there. I didn't know you got a recruiter there to go to play football, and then he just kind of saw the writing on the wall with all these, 135 kids.
It's a really good school for. Oh, it's a really good school for that level of football. I know a couple guys that I coached ended up playing there. They're tough. I mean, they're in the national hunt every year. So even though it is a smaller school, division wise, a lot of talent at that school.
14,000 kids for a D3 school. It's sold out. The stadium holds like 18,000 people, and it's packed to capacity with waiting only to get in every game. It is absolutely crazy how that's still Division 3. And like you go to like a Northern Illinois game or something like that, and they have like 400 people in the stadiums,
Well, I think that's the thing that's kind of nuts that people don't realize is you got the University of Wisconsin, but outside of the University of Wisconsin, they don't have like a Wisconsin State. So it's really the big time university, the Badgers, and then after that, they have a lot of D3 schools that have a lot of kids. Like I got recruited by quite a few D3 schools, but they're like, a lot of them were 3,000 students. Like Whitewater, 14,000 kids is a lot of kids.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big D3 school. So those some of those Wisconsin schools, the smaller schools, are actually pretty big because they don't have 1 AA schools. They don't have, like Illinois has Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois, Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois. I mean, it's, Bradley. They just got a ton of other colleges that are big time colleges where Wisconsin doesn't. So those D3 schools kind of get a lot more people at them.
And we talked about the Illinois beer laws before. Wisconsin has no beer laws. If you're there with your
zero.
Parents,
I've told stories before where I've almost died like twice in Wisconsin. I mean, it gets wild up there. I'll tell these. I won't tell these stories on this on the air, but I've had some issues where I've like almost died in Wisconsin. It's crazy.
If you're there with your parents, you can drink at dinner time with like whatever it is. Doesn't matter what. There's no age. You could be like 9 years old and drink at a table with your parents. Doesn't matter. And then they have like these beer specials from 7 at night till 2 in the morning for $7. All you can drink. It is like the best. I mean, hey, if you're thinking about going, if you're a kid listening to this show, thinking about going to college, you better think about your decisions instead of going to California or someplace in Illinois. Go to Wisconsin.
Once I went up to Wisconsin they have one of the biggest beer festivals in the United States called the Midwest Craft Beer Fest is up in Madison. I went there one time. I went to the university and like walked around. They've got a full huge bar like on campus, like on campus. Like it's wild. I was like, I should have went here. I was like, this place is awesome. I mean, it's a cool school. So it's nuts up there. I went to a baseball game for a buddy's bachelor party one year. They literally tailgate for Brewers games like it's an NFL game.
Yep.
Like it's wild.
Great stadium too. That great stadium too.
Absolutely.
And there's walking distance away. There's a whole slew of bars like walking distance from the stadium up and down.
My new favorite thing is only going to pro sports and stuff where I can walk from the stadium to a bar afterwards and I don't get stuck in line waiting for hours for transportation after a game. That's my new rule. I will not go to stadiums anymore if I have to wait 2 hours for an Uber after the game.
That's a good rule. But anyway, off to Wisconsin Whitewater. Brandon Aiyuk requested a trade from the 49ers. We'll see what happens with that. Nick Chubb looked like he's coming along just fine. Does weightlifting and jumping really kind of like push the needle for you as far as a comeback is concerned, JT? Or because I see him like with these massive 800-pound squats and this. But I mean, it's the cutting ability and things like that. Anybody can run forward or do the squats and things like that, but it's the cutting ability that really is the problem with the ACL tears, and he tore everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
I see the guy coming
it's
back.
nice
But
to see that he's lifting and he looks strong. But yeah, that I'm still worried about it. I've faded him in like every league. So if he ends up coming back and being really good, I'm gonna really that's gonna hurt me. But yeah, getting on there and making the quick cuts and making sure the knee is stable is always the one you got to look out for after these type of injuries.
I need a running back bad. I'm contemplating trading Burton away to get Jerome Ford right now, and it's kind of like, I know it's not a good dynasty move, but I'm so thin at running back. It's like, man, if Chubb doesn't really make it back this year, does not shelve himself, I think that Ford might have a really good season. And I have my whole team's stacked with like receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends. I just don't have any. My number one running back is like Eric Gray from the Giants. Like, I mean, that's how bad my running back is.
Yeah, that's rough. I have a couple teams like that.
It's terrible. But all right, so let's go to so what we want to do here now is talk about redraft sleepers and dynasty keepers. So guys who, if you haven't, it's almost redraft season. That's why we're kind of coming out of our hibernation from redraft and starting to touch on the redraft stuff that's going on. But also we're dynasty players. 95% or probably more than that of our teams are all dynasty teams, and most of them are campus Canton as far as that goes, all the way down the rabbit hole. So what we're talking about here is, in the wake of your these redraft leagues that are starting up, who's some guys that you should draft in your late rounds of, if you're only 12 or 14 or 15 rounds deep, you're probably not going to get these guys. But if you're in a 20, 25 round redraft league, which I think most teams should be, these are guys you should probably pick up. And then in a dynasty league, these are keepers right now that you should grab. But I'm not sure. You want me to start, or you want to start?
Yeah, John, you jump in with your guys, and I'll pile on after you.
All right. So for me, I got a guy named Dylan Laube, who's a running back from New Hampshire. He's 5'10", 206. So now he's not as undersized as some people are saying. He's 5'10", 206 is not really small. It's 210, I think, or 212 is the kind of what everybody thinks is the breaking point between the stud running backs or guys who can carry the workload. So if you're 5 or 6 pounds below the stud threshold, I think you're okay. But he had 47 touchdowns his senior year in high school, which is nuts. He's kind of a screen pass, middle screen hero in college. If you watch some of his tapes, he's got everything is a quick screen or a middle screen, but he does have some pretty long passes where he's got hands of gold, man. That guy catches everything. He's a 6th round pick from the Raiders. He had almost 250 carries and over 1,200 yards as a junior, so he can carry the workload. He's done that already. I mean, in a smaller school like New Hampshire, but he had 33 total touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. 117 receptions over the last 2 seasons, over 1,100 yards receiving in the last 2 years. The Raiders don't really have a receiving back on the team besides Zamir White and Alexander Madison. I mean, am I nuts for saying that Dylan Laube is a late round pick?
Yeah, so when I did my draft analysis for DLF and I went through and I did, if you want to go back and look at it, I did articles, pre-draft and post-draft on all the running backs, gave them grades. I wasn't really high on Laube, just because I didn't see where he fit for a lot of teams. I thought he needed like a really prime landing spot. And you know what? That's exactly what he got. He ended up getting a prime landing spot with the Raiders, 2 guys in front of him who have not shown that they are the man. And he went to a place where they need a third down back. And with the special teams rules, he's the guy who can play special teams. So I think he is very intriguing because Zamir White, we haven't seen him really catch passes. What is Madison going to be coming over from the Vikings? Obviously, he was a guy certain people were all over, but I was fading him last year, and he did not produce for the Vikings. Now he's there with White. Some people love White, but again, we've never seen it for a full season. So I think Laube there, and here's the thing is, I think the Raiders are going to be pretty bad. I have to be honest with you. I think they got that spark from Pierce last year coming in, but I don't think this team is very good. I think they're going to be down a lot in games. I could see him getting a ton of snaps as the third down back. And again, if you're in a league that has special teams points, which all my leagues that I run have them, because I'm like, it's part of the game. Why wouldn't you get points for special teams yards?
Right.
I think he's worth a flyer late in drafts. I really do. Especially in Dynasty, if you have a taxi squad where you can stash them. But even in redraft, if you're in a bigger league where, like John, like you said, the little caveat there, if you're in a league that only has like a 15, you're only drafting 15, 18 rounds, like you're probably not taking him. But if you have a bigger league where 25, 30 rounds, I think even in redraft, he's maybe worth a swing at. Because again, if he gets out there, he doesn't do anything early on. He ends up not winning that third down back role. He's a guy you can easily drop and replace with someone else. But I like the upside of him.
Yeah, I don't see like it was Zamir White and even Madison, and then they got Amir Abdullah, Britton Brown, Sincere McCormick, Jeff Foreman, Sincere McCormick on the team. But like those guys, especially Zamir White and Alexander Madison, like they're not really going to be big receiving guys out of the backfield. So, worst case scenario, Laube is already kind of penciled in a PPR back role in this team. So he might. I'm not going to see him through the middle, but I'm not going to see him like run the middle a lot. As a matter of fact, if you watch some of his like highlights and film, he does a lot of bouncing to the outside when he gets the opportunity to. He is he's pretty decent. He's more of a straight line guy than like a zigzag, almost like like a poor man's kind of Mike Allstott, just kind of run forward and like give people the business sometimes. But he's not a true like crusher. But he is. He goes to the middle sometimes when there's holes, but there's obvious blatant holes, and some of those New Hampshire wasn't like a humongous a powerhouse, and they didn't play crazy good teams a lot. But there was some holes, and when there was holes around, he saw them. But he mostly an outside guy, a screen pass guy. But there's a use for that in the NFL. There's plenty of small guys who did pretty well just catching the ball in the backfield. So I'm okay with that. He's definitely a keeper on my dynasty teams. He's already 24. That's the one thing too. He's a little bit older, but I'm okay with that, man. He's
yeah, John. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit with age, with some of these guys coming out with all the COVID years. Quite a few of these guys, quarterbacks included, that are a lot older than guys in the past coming out. If I'm looking at running back, I really am looking at a 3 to 4 year window anyway.
Right,
is all I want out of that guy. So I don't mind getting a guy that's 24 if he's going to get me 3 to 4 solid years, and then by the time his rookie contract is done, he's done. I feel like I got my value at that point.
Yeah, if you can get a guy for it's absolutely. Because he's even if you traded all your picks away and you only got trade some of your garbage players for late round picks, pick up Laube. This is something that this is how you like win championships, by having this late round, middle of the season guy who just bam, okay, something happens where somebody else gets hurt. Now you got a guy who's just a PPR back, especially if you get extra points for receptions or like a premium for running back receptions. It's a perfect guy to have in your team because he is a receiving back for sure. So. Who's one of your guys, JT? Who's a late round redraft sleeper and a dynasty keeper for you?
Yeah, so I've got 2 second-year wide receivers on my list. I know you got a couple rookies, so I was going to go with some second-year guys that I think are maybe falling a little bit. First guy I like, and I know this is going to be just absolute shocker to you, John, but I love Josh Downs for the Colts.
What?
Second-year guy, really solid year as a rookie. Had a knee injury mid-year that slowed him down just a little bit. Here's the reason why I think he's a guy you got to be looking out for. They drafted AD Mitchell from Texas. I think he's getting a lot of hype now. I think people are expecting Mitchell to kind of be the number 2 for the Colts. I like Mitchell. He's a guy I'm nervous about. I think he's got all the talent in the world, but I'm just nervous about him. Just how he's going to end up fitting there. I think Downs is going to end up being kind of that safety blanket for AR. I think Anthony Richards is going to drop the Downs whenever he gets. Downs is a guy that can make moves. He was Drake May's number 1 wide receiver, and you saw Drake May missed him last year when he left North Carolina and went to the NFL. He missed him. So he was a guy, 98 targets as a rookie, 68 catches, 771 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, and he was banged up a little bit. He missed 1 game, but he was banged up in a few other games where he just wasn't moving as fast or as fluid. And I understand we've seen some rookies. We've seen the Jamar Chases. We've seen the Justin Jeffersons put up just ghastly numbers, just unbelievable numbers as rookies. People are looking down on Downs like, he was a little bit of disappointment. I'm like, a little bit of a disappointment. Their passing game was terrible. Like Minshew was decent, but he wasn't great. And he still had 68 catches for 700 yards. You add a couple more touchdowns in there, and it's a much higher score. So Downs is a guy I like because I think people are overlooking him because of the Mitchell hype and with Pittman being there. And again, while I think Anthony Richardson is going to be really good, people are still questioning his passing ability, which I understand. The big part of his game is his touch and those like drop off passes. Can he actually like take something off the ball and still get it to the guy without throwing it to the ground or without throwing it through his head? Because he's got just a cannon. So that's Downs is one of those guys. I just think he's especially in redraft. I think he's falling down a bit. But I think this Colts offense has a chance to be a really high scoring unit this year. And I think Downs is going to be in the mix. I really think he ends up being their wide receiver too. For me, projection wise, I think he's going to be close to 75, 80 catches, that 850, 900 yards, and maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. So I really like him as kind of a flex play for you in redraft, and I love him in Dynasty. I just think he could be around for a while, and if Anthony Richardson puts it all together, I think this could be a pretty exciting offense for the next couple of years.
Yeah, you're looking at Jonathan Taylor as the meat and potatoes of this whole offense, and then Anthony Richardson's going to run the ball a lot. He's going to have to throw some passes. Michael Pittman is for sure the number one receiver. That's unquestioned. But Josh Downs for sure in the passing game, he's my unquestioned number 2 in this passing game. I know they have 100 million tight ends every year on the team for whatever God knows reason, what the Colts love tight ends for, but they have 17,000 tight ends on the roster every year. But Josh Downs is for sure someone who I love getting Josh Downs on every one of my teams. I think he's in for a big year this year. He's underrated. He's 5'10", 171, but I mean, he is just and also he does special teams too. If you give points for special teams, so another boost to his value there. But I'm a big Josh Downs fan. That's a great one. So,
how about you, John? What's another guy on your list?
The next guy I have, which we talked about, I think he's getting pretty popular everywhere right now. But I drafted him in a couple of leagues. Once I don't have him, I'm trying to trade for, and the word's getting out already that he may have a chance. But it's Jacob Cowing, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He's a small dude. He's only 5'8", 168 pounds. He's only 23. He's had 5 years of college under his belt already. 4 of his 5 years at Arizona, he had 3 of 5 years at Arizona. He had at least 25% target share. He had over 1,000 yards in 2 of his 5 seasons. He's 3 of the 5 years, he had over 100 targets. He's small and shifty, but no injury history, which means he knows how to protect himself. He ran a 4.38 40, but you look at the guy and you watch him, he looks a lot faster and shiftier than that. He's he doesn't have great scores as far as a lot of those charts are concerned, but 85 receptions back to back at Arizona. Drafted him in the 4th round after Ricky Pearsall. So he's kind of being overlooked right now. Ricky seems to be like if something was to happen, if Brandon Aiyuk gets traded, Ricky Pearsall is kind of the default thought. But to me, I think Jacob Cowing has just as good of a chance. Pearsall's already on some kind of a designated list I'm not sure what it's non-injury designated list. I didn't get the story about what's going on with that, but is there a world where Jacob Cowing outproduces Ricky Pearsall this year?
It's going to be tough, but I really like Cowing. I just think again, and this is what I know you like him and I like him a lot. He reminds me of Josh Downs. Like he is that size of guy, and we've seen the last couple of years in the league with the rule changes and everything else. These small guys can be productive. Like where in the past they just kind of got eaten up by DBs. They couldn't get off any pressure. All you had to do was jam them. That's not the case anymore. You can move these guys around. You can play them in the slot, so you can't get a good jam on them. I just really like Cowing. Guy produced everywhere. Produced at UTEP, then went to USC, then went to Arizona. Everywhere he was at, he was productive. And that's, to me, is one of the things. And then when he ran that 4.38 at the combine, I was actually there for that. I was like, that popped for me. Because I liked his production. I knew he was small, but I was like, what kind of athletic traits does he have? And he looked really good at the combine. Josh Downs was a guy that dropped to the 3rd round for the Colts last year, and then Cowing go to the 4th round. I think if Cowing goes in another draft other than this one, because it was so deep at wide receiver, I think he really is more of a early to mid 3rd round pick if he got drafted in a different year. This year, just there's so many good wide receivers that he kind of fell. And to me, the fact that already have Debo, already have Aiyuk, you took Pearsall in the first round, which was a little shocking to me. I knew he was moving up draft boards, but I did not see him going in the first round. For the Niners to come back and say, "Oh no, we still want Cowing in the fourth," to me says something. They must have really liked him to get him in the fourth round. I really like him. He's a stash. To me, John, there's a chance he does absolutely nothing this year for the Niners. I mean, there's a really high probability. But if anybody gets banged up and hurt, Cowan could be a guy that comes in. Like you said, he's a 5 years in college. The guy knows how to play the game. Really good slot receiver, knows how to get open, has great speed. And the fact that he's on the Niners, I mean, and they know how to get their players the ball in the right situations. If anybody gets hurt and goes down, Cowing could be really huge for that team. So if you're in a dynasty, I'm taking him in. I was getting him in the fifth round, but people have started to get kind of, they're starting to get hip to him. So it's like, okay, so I've had to start getting him in the fourth because if I've been waiting till the fifth, he's been gone, depending on where I've been drafting. So I've been trying to grab him anywhere in the fourth round if I can get him. I love him as a stash. I'm in a couple leagues where he didn't get drafted at all for whatever the reason was because of just the way the league went. I've been the very first waiver wire pickups I've been in getting him as my first waiver claim. So in a shallow redraft league, no, I'm keeping an eye on him, but I'm not drafting him. But if I'm in a deeper redraft, he's worth taking a shot as a backup if you don't need him to see if he hits later. Or again, if you don't draft him, keep an eye out on him and have him there ready to go pick up waivers if anything happens to any of these other guys. But I'm like you. I'm a big Cowing guy. I just think he ends up making a place for himself in the NFL.
He's one of those electric guys that when he gets a chance, I feel like he's going to, like you said, like Downs. If him and Downs get spots on their team and they actually produce for a little, they're not going back. Like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Those are guys who once they get, and then you're not gonna be able to trade them. You're not gonna be able to get them anymore. So it's like you get them now when they're cheap, or if they do go off, you're never gonna see that person in your roster. Even right now, this guy's asking for a mid-third round pick next year to get Jacob Cowing. I'm like, dude, I'm not giving you a third for Cowing, but at the same time, if I want him, that's what I got to pay. It is what it is.
Yep, and like I said, the price is just going up. He's looked good in camp so far. I like him a lot. John, we got a question here real quick from the new mailman Chris, our guy.
Chris Smith.
Jumping in, he says, "Is it true that Dalvin Cook is this year's Raheem Mostert?" Oh man, I had Dalvin Cook in a few leagues. I had him in our Baby and Boomers league. Man, he was disappointing last year. I'm just not sure I see Cook making the comeback. We saw it with Leonard Fournette, we saw it once guys start bouncing around team to team and they're not catching on right away and getting a lot of playing time. I started getting real nervous because it's like,
yeah,
you're like, okay, he's not making it on that team. What makes you think he's going to be the guy on another team? So I can see somebody pick him up, but I just don't see Dalvin Cook getting a lot of run unless he ends up on a team where just massive injuries occur and he ends up being the only guy left and they got to play him.
He's one of those guys where maybe he was hurt last year. Maybe he did have some problems. Maybe, who knows? And he showed, he was absolutely awesome when he was in his prime, but it takes a toll on you when you're the lead guy for a handful of years. And when these guys, the problem is when their value starts submarining or their talent starts submarining, it goes down fast, and you can't recover.
Especially these running backs. Yeah, with the fact that the Vikings let him go for Alexander Madison, you're like, and then you saw how Madison played last year, you're like, oh, this isn't good for Dalvin Cook. If they weren't willing to pony up anything for him, it doesn't look good.
No, not at all. Not at all. So who's one of your guys, a late round sleeper and a dynasty keeper?
This is the guy that is probably not super late round anymore. He's probably going to be more like 15th, 16th round pick, somewhere in that range. And it's Devante Wicks for the Green Bay Packers. A guy that people is starting to get a little bit of buzz, had a nice end of the year last year. Ended up with 39 catches, 581 yards, and 4 touchdowns for the Packers in his rookie year. He was a guy who was a late draft pick out of Virginia. He played on a pretty horrible Virginia team. So I think that kind of hurt him a little bit in his draft stock. They're really liking him in Green Bay. And now there's a lot of mouths to feed there. And so I think that's helping his value some, is that people just aren't sure who's going to be the number one. I'm not sold that Christian Watson can stay healthy. I like Jaden Reed a ton, but Jaden Reed's price is probably at an all-time high right now. I still think he's going to be in the mix. I think they're going to figure out ways to get him the ball. But here's my comparison for these guys. I feel like Jaden Reed is the Debo, and Wicks is going to end up being the Aiyuk in that offense. So that's where I'm looking at these guys. I think that's the chance. I know they still got Romeo Dobbs. I know they've got a couple other guys there, but I can see Wicks kind of really taking a step forward this year. And again, low draft capital last year, so people kind of didn't even think about him till late in the year. I picked him up in a couple Dynasty leagues late in the season. He's a guy I'm worth taking a shot, because if he ends up being the number one or number two on the Packers, an offense that greatly improved as the year went on with Jordan Love last year, he's a guy I'm worth taking a shot, especially if I'm getting mid-teens. And he has a chance to end up being the wide receiver one on a good offense with a good young QB. I like it. So I like it for redraft, and I definitely like it for fantasy. And again, he's a guy, if he ends up, like you said, if he ends up hitting, he's never going to be cheaper than he is right now. So he's a guy I want to go grab.
JT, I've seen on the internet in the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, I've seen the Jaden Reed stands, the Christian Watson stands, how he's going to come back. It was just his hamstrings. He's going to come back better than ever. Jaden Reed is the most talented player in his team. And then I see the Dontavian Wicks truthers. Then I see Romeo Doubs is coming back. And then I even see that Bo Melton is going to be the guy this year. He's going to surpass everyone. There are so many talented players on this team all around. And they got 2 good tight ends too. I've never seen so many young talented players on one team. This team's, their ceiling is I feel bad for the NFC North, because the Lions are building up, and the Packers just, it's all they have to do is keep driving defense next couple of years and let these kids get older with the team. It is a fantastic offense. It's nice to have so many talented players on the offense. It is like, if everybody has a good opinion about every one of the receivers at some point in time, it just goes to show you how good they are drafting. And too bad they didn't do this shit for Aaron Rodgers when he was there the whole time.
I know. He was like, you're thinking about it. You're like, man, Jordan Love's got all this talent around him. I think they probably have the best defense in the NFC North. So, they're loaded on defense. So they're going to be a tough team. And I think, John, the theme of these players for you and me both a little bit, rookies, second-year guys, they are in kind of muddled situations. That's why they're deep sleepers. That's why they're values right now. You're trying to grab a guy in case he ends up becoming the guy. So, you are taking a little bit of a chance here on these players that maybe maybe Wicks gets lost in the mix. Maybe he does only have 45 catches, 500 yards and a couple touchdowns, because it is a lot of Reed. Christian Watson does bounce back, and he has a bunch of catches. And then, the tight ends, Kraft and Musgrave. So there's a chance that it does get even out between all these guys. But that's why we're talking about these guys kind of deep sleepers now, because if they do hit, it's going to be great value for you. If they miss, again, you're taking them hopefully kind of late, and it's not going to crush your team. You can kind of pivot if they ended up not being the guy. And I think that's why you're getting value for a Wicks, a value for a Downs, a value for a Cowing, a Laube, because these guys are kind of in situations we're just not 100% sure how they're going to shake out. But that's where I think the value comes from. But I think all these guys have the talent to kind of step up.
Yeah, and it's someone you can leave in a waiver wire for the first couple of weeks or so. But when they do hit, man, you're going to be blowing a lot of your fab getting them, because these guys could be, they could be the truth and the light for their offenses if they get the opportunity. So,
you want to be that guy that picks them up the week before everybody else goes to get them. So that's what I'm saying. If you don't draft these guys, at least have them on your radar to get early, in case anything happens.
And if you do draft them, just keep them on your team. And
don't get rid of them too early. Give them a little bit of time, unless you have injuries or you absolutely have to make a move. These are the type of guys that you don't want to drop too early. I had a league. I dropped a Brandon Aiyuk like 3 years ago. I was mad. It was an auction league. I kept getting kicked out of Yahoo, which is why I won't play on Yahoo anymore. It kept kicking me out of the draft. It bid up and took Brandon Aiyuk for a ton of money that I did not want to spend on him. He got off to a very, very slow start. I was bitter about the computer picking for me. I dropped him, and then he went off to end the season. I was like, so double whammy. I didn't want him. I got him, and then I dropped him when he ended up crushing it. So sometimes you got to be patient with these deeper sleepers. I think sometimes we get all fired up. We're like, okay. And then when they don't hit the first 3 weeks of the year, we're like, well, that was a waste. You're like, well, that's why they're a deep sleeper. You gotta give it some time.
Patience is a virtue when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's one of those things where you draft guys for a reason. It's a reason you draft them, not just because they're ranked, 127 or 148 while you were drafting or where they were in somebody else's draft board. It's because you did the research. You looked at some things with these guys who they're talented. They were studs in college. They were, they came out of high school as a 5-star recruit. They've showed in the past and they've done stuff, and to have them on your team and then just do all that research and then you cut them after week 2 because they didn't get any playing time yet. You can't do that, man. You got to go with what got you there. This is your team. It's nobody else's. Trust the process. Trust your process, and make these redraft sleepers your dynasty keepers.
Yeah, and then some of these redraft leagues I've been in, I see guys get frustrated early and drop guys, and I swoop in and pick them up.
Yeah,
and they're like, "What are you doing? Why'd you pick him up? He's done nothing." I'm like, "Dude, we're like not even a third of the way through the season. That guy still has a chance to blow up." And some of those guys have won leagues for me, and the other guy's mad. He's like, "Oh, I drafted I can't believe I dropped him." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't believe you dropped him either." I'm like, "Thank you, I appreciate it."
When I see people do that with quarterbacks who don't start the season, it's like, what are you doing? Like, what what is going on? Like, how would you? I don't get it, man. But whatever. It is what it is. But anyway, thanks for watching the Dynasty Evaluation Show. You can find the show here weekly. It'll probably be a couple times a week over here at Dynasty. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, Fantasy and Frames, I mean, there was just never-ending content coming out the last couple of days across the board. Like, subscribe, follow the whole deal. Great talent here across the board. Great guests. And that's it. You just find me on Twitter, John McGlynn75. JT, what's going on with you?
Yeah, you can find me at JT Orange. I'm just, doing articles, all kinds of off-season stuff here. I'm in a million drafts at the moment. I'm in C2C heaven at the moment. I've been drafting all kinds of college drafts, but loading up for redraft is coming. I spent all day yesterday texting everybody, getting all my drafts set up. Making sure nobody was overlapping. One of my leagues I've been in for like 20 years switched the draft date, and it's never on a different date. It's thrown me off. So I'm like checking all that, trying to make sure I can make it all the drafts. So redraft is right around the corner.
Yes, it is. It'll be yours. I got 2 drafts in Bridgeport next weekend. Full bar, bring that kind of stuff. It'll be 24, at least 24 people there for having a great time. I drafted my last 2 of the Mighty McGlynn Dynasty Home League home drafts. So I'm starting another one up.
Those ones are always interesting, John, because you're getting at the end where you've kind of seen, you've kind of seen where a lot of the other leagues have drafted with these rookies. You've got a little bit more ADP now. You got a little bit more idea on value where some of these guys are going. So sometimes I've got probably 3 or 4 dynasty leagues that haven't drafted yet, done the rookie draft, because they're leagues they kind of run late. They always do. And so it's definitely going to be interesting where some of these guys are going compared to where they were going, like end of May, early June.
It's these guys who just got on a dynasty the last like 3 or 4 years, and they're kind of in it still, but they're not. They don't write. They don't do any podcasting. It's just normal dudes like me and you and whatever. But they, I guess not like me and you, but they wait until the very end. They want to see the redraft ADP come out. They want to see where everything's at. They want to wait. Or I'm like, next year, you guys, I'm so sick of this because the guys like that, they don't trade in the offseason either. I train the waiver wire off, but the trades are still open. These guys just hold on their teams, no trading. It's Joe Castleman and Jacob Badesco's, Joe Galums, these dudes who just they make, maybe you could offer them 1,700 trades a year and it's just deny, no counter, just deny. They love their draft picks, no trading, and unless you get them, and if they do counter, it'll be some ridiculously counter just to kind of tell you like, hey, I'm not interested in trading this guy. Don't even bother me anymore. And it's like, but whatever. That's why these two leagues go last here, because they're just regular dudes.
But hey, sometimes as a commish, you got to figure that out. The guys that are like, hey, I don't want to pay attention all summer. I want to wait till like everything comes out for camp and does the drafts. I've got leagues like that. I've got a couple that are like, hey, we want to draft the latest possible we can draft because I want to know who is actually the wide receiver 2 for this team. So I understand it. So I'm in leagues like that as well.
Next year I'm gonna make this one of the first leagues that draft. These two are the first ones that draft.
You're gonna throw them all off, John. You're gonna throw them all off.
You guys are jerks. But anyway, thanks for watching Dynasty Evaluation. Always good fun. Much appreciate the handful of people that showed up today in the middle of the day on a weekday, hopefully from work, enjoying with the headphones in at the desk, watching the show, Dynasty Evaluation. Thanks a lot.